And I think we're good to go. So, welcome everybody, or in this case, my person that's here. Um, Thank you for attending today, or at least checking out this recording. Today's training is going to be all about engaging students using different tools in Canvas. So, I I designed this training to kind of go over three main things that I see as useful for getting your students involved in your Canvas course and in your course in general. Uh, Even if you're only using Canvas a little bit here and there, these are still strategies you can use to increase engagement in general in your classroom. So the three topics we're going to go over today are discussion boards, and bear with me. I promise I'm not just going to be like, doing that typical trope. There's strategies for how you can use those. I'm also going to go over groups and how you can set up group sites for your students in Canvas so that they have their own area to work in. That can still be monitored by you because I know how important that is. And then the last one, number three, is I'm going to show you how you can assign peer reviews and what those look like. So it's three different activities for engaging your students in your course that isn't just submitting an assignment. So to begin, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to go to I actually changed my mind. I'm going to go to a course that has a previous discussion board in it that I've actually used. So tech leaders, hopefully it didn't wipe out all my submissions. Okay, so a discussion board, if you're not familiar, I do cover this in one training, and I go over all the settings and everything for discussion boards in one of my prior trainings. It might have been the last training series actually, but just feel free to email me if you need a link to that. Otherwise, it is located in the global announcements. But a discussion board is basically like a thread. The way I described it is it's kind of like Canvas's version of AOL Instant Messenger from back in the day. If you're my age, you can hop in and literally it's a discussion board, a posting area where you can post ideas. Students can see what you've posted and respond to it. And so if you've been in college in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, or took any online courses at any point, it doesn't matter if it's Blackboard or D2L or Canvas or any of the LMSs. I'm sure you probably encountered discussion boards. I encountered them all the time when I was at Creighton, working with their ed department. The number one way that I would see discussion boards being used, which made them very unpopular with students, was that typically there'd just be like a question and you'd be asked to respond, or you'd be asked to post your answer to the question, providing like maybe a word count. It might be like in 200 words or less, post about this, and then you'd have to go in and reply to two other people. And so what you'd end up with is a bunch of people making very similar posts and then going through and responding to one another, going, wow, such great ideas. I really like how you said this, and things of that nature. And I always just thought it was kind of funny because there's definitely different things you can do with a discussion board. So what I wanted to do is first show you an example of an active discussion board. So this is one that myself and my coworkers used last year with our OTL group at the end of the year. And the whole idea behind this discussion board was to do a asynchronous session, or sorry, to provide a place asynchronously at the end of the year where people could post their reflections on the year, things that we had done. And as you can see, as I scroll through this, we have teachers, which were my students in this OTL group, um, responding, and then people responding and giving comments below to discuss things that they did. So this is what it can kind of look like. I know it looks a little messy in this view, but fortunately, you can actually collapse certain topics. So if you look up here, there's collapse and uncollapse. So I'm just going to collapse these. And what that does is it kind of collapses the ones that you have or have not read. So why didn't that work? Oh, I clicked the wrong way. So the up arrow button is to actually collapse them. And so then that breaks each student down into this view. And then it over here on the side, it tells you how many replies that there have been. and you can click on it to actually see it. Oh my gosh, if it would work. Go. Okay, well, that uncollapsed them. Let's play with that and find out why it's doing that. They are going to be redoing discussion boards. We're either going to get that in second semester or we're going to get that at the beginning of next year. It's nothing bad. It's just a better view for discussion boards to kind of clean it up a little bit. I've seen it already. I actually really like it. But at any rate, that's kind of an idea of what a discussion board is. And then here are some ways that you can use it. So number one of my favorite ways that I use discussion boards is as a sort of bell work. Now, it's been about 5 years since I've been in the classroom, which, yeah, I'm getting up there. I can tell I'm rusty when I sub. But it's been about 5 years or so since I've been in the classroom. And if I had Canvas at that time, one of the big things that I would do based on what I've seen other teachers using it for is just simply as bell work space. So each day, the students knew that they had to log into Canvas as the first thing that they did, and then waiting for them in their module for the day at the very top was bell work. And so they could click on that bell work discussion and they can read the question or the prompt and put their answer in. And so that's a very simple way to track that your students, A, are doing bell work, and B, having a written record of what they've actually done for the bell work. They can also communicate with one another if you want. And the other cool feature is in the settings, you can actually set your discussion boards so that nobody can see what anyone else has posted until they have posted theirs. And so I do have that in one of my trainings, but I'll just show you that option if I hit edit on this discussion board in the settings. Here, the one that I like to enable is users must post before seeing replies. And so that means they have to put their answer to the question in before they can see anybody else's. Once they answer the question in the discussion board and hit post, you are able to get that you are able to allow them to see what everyone else has posted. So because of using that feature, you can get a lot of original answers. So that's one use. That's probably the most common use I've seen for teachers that are already using Canvas quite a bit is bell work. Also, same general ideas, exit slips. And you can assign points to these. You can even assign completion points to these, so they can be graded if you want them to be, or they can be not graded. It just depends on how you want to do it. But that's one way that I've seen people using it. Another method that I've seen for using these discussion boards is as a discussion prompt. So if you're having an in-class discussion, I used to have a lot of in-class discussions when I was teaching science. I really liked to utilize that because there'd be like, some interesting questions you could ask, like, what would happen if the sun, or a question, I guess I'm coming up with this on the fly. Let's say, what if the Earth suddenly was no longer tilted? How would that affect our seasons? How would that change things on our planet? And so then the students would have to think about that based on what we had been learning and kind of come up with a write-up or a summary of what they thought would happen to the Earth if suddenly we were no longer tilted on an axis, causing our seasons. So aside from just the obvious that we would no longer have seasons, what other things could happen? And you'd get some really creative responses. But one thing that I noticed is some of my students that weren't the most keen on speaking out in front of everybody, if you could use a discussion board like this, I just used paper back in the day, but the discussion board works the same way. Give the students a few minutes before actually having the in-class discussion to write down some of their thoughts. And so by writing down some of their thoughts and then posting it on a discussion board prior to that, number one, you have prompts. So if everybody's being real quiet, let's say it's class after lunch and everybody's half asleep, or it's the first class of the day and you're having a hard time getting them engaged, having them post in here will give you some things that you can draw off of. You don't even have to call out the student specifically, be like, somebody posted this. and then you can read it off to the class and be like, what are your thoughts on that, or something to that effect. And one thing that I found from using paper before, I would have my students write it down and submit it on slips of paper, is that some of my students that barely ever raised their hand or barely ever wanted to actually participate in class was they would have some really great answers on that piece of paper because they were a lot more comfortable writing it down without having to speak out in front of the entire class. So that's just the way some people are. So that could be a great way to engage some of your more quiet students, is by having a discussion board ready to go before some sort of a class discussion, and then giving them a space to jot down their ideas. And then the other final strategy for discussion boards that I wanted to talk about is group work. So in Canvas, you can actually set up groups in your courses, and discussion boards can be really cool because what you can do is you can provide a digital board for your students to communicate in a small group. And here my next topic is actually going to be like, how do I set up these group areas and what do they look like? So that's just a few strategies for discussion boards. Hopefully that's helpful to a degree. Some people are like, yeah, I already know that, or I already do all that stuff. And then other people, maybe they didn't think of one part of that. So I always like to bring that up in the beginning. Are there any questions so far about discussion boards before I hop into kind of the offshoot of setting up groups? And I'll check the chat here real quick.
Hey, Tyler, I do have a question real quick.
Sure.
If a kid is putting some inappropriate stuff in there, is there a way that the teacher can get in and delete a post?
Yes. Let me go through. So I believe it's the 3 dots up in the corner. So like this is Adam's comment. I can hit delete on that. One thing that I also tell people is there's a setting somewhere in the settings that you can turn off the student's ability to delete the comment. And that can be useful. I got to remember where that is. That can be useful because, oh yeah, here it is. Let students edit or delete their own discussion replies. And I got there in my settings, and that's on this page. This could be useful by not letting them delete it in case you want to grab a record of it for disciplinary reasons. So let's say a student posts something inappropriate and you're like, yep, that's a write-up or a referral or something. You can screenshot it and they can't delete it, and then you can go in and delete it later. So believe it or not, we encountered this problem occasionally when I was at Creighton. Yeah, college students actually doing this. And they would like make some inappropriate comment or be insulting to somebody, and then they'd try to delete it so there'd be no evidence of it. So a lot of the professors I worked with actually turned off that setting so they could no longer delete their own discussion replies, and then they'd be able to take a screenshot and delete it themselves. But that's totally up to you. That's in the settings here. So hopefully that helps answer your question. All right. As a side note, when I transferred from working in a middle school to going to a college, I was very surprised how similar some of the problems were. I thought it'd be completely different. Kids are kids, even if they're in their late teens or early teens, I guess. So it's kind of funny. But at any rate, we're going to hop into groups now. So to start off with, I want to show you the end product of what this looks like, and then I'll show you how to actually set it up, because it'll be easier if you kind of know what it looks like while I'm going through the setup instructions. So I'm going to go to our Digital Learning Leaders course that's going on right now. So each school has a digital learning leader who is attending a monthly session, and we actually set up groups in here. So I'm going to go here to the people area and show you kind of what that looks like. I'm just going to pick a random teacher. So I'm sorry if this teacher is watching the recording later. I just needed somebody to use. Let's do Diana. I don't know Diana. So we'll hit act as user. Okay, so here's what the course looks like for a basic student. And there's a couple different ways that they can access groups when they're set up in Canvas. So one way is they can go to the people button here in their course. And you'll notice that along here on the top where it says everyone, it lists everybody that's in the course. But then there's a groups button next to it. And so what the student can do is they can click on groups. They can see that all the groups are listed here, and there's 5 students in each group. And we'll notice that for the student, there's a lock on the far end of that. That means that the student's not in that group and they can't click on it or see anything. So what they can do is they can navigate down to their group. So here's theirs. They're in group 17, and they have a visit button. If they click here, what this does, if we look here at the top, we have the main course, and then this is a sub part of the course for group 17. What this is a private, or it's private to the students in the group and the teacher. The teacher will always be able to see all this stuff, but it's private in a sense that this is a work environment for the student. So as you'll notice, they have the announcement button so they can post announcements to one another. And this could be really great, especially in high schools and middle schools where students might be working on a project for a class or something, and that you can give them this area here in Canvas that they have access to where they can communicate with one another. And all that communication is saved in our OPS system and you can see all of it. So it's really nice for that. So they can make announcements to one another. If they click on the pages area, they can actually create pages just like you can. So if they're working on an assignment together, you know, they can one of them can create a page or share a link, you know, to a OneDrive file or something. They can have discussion boards. So they can either create their own discussion board, or you can create one and assign it to them, which I'll show you here in a little bit. And and you can do the same thing with assignments as well. So you can actually assign an assignment to a group, and you can assign a discussion to a group. And so this gives them an area that they can communicate that's separated from everybody else in the course. They even have their own file storage area. So if they click on files over here, each member of the group can add their files here and they can all access this stuff. So it's a really, really cool environment for stuff like that. I always think back, like, sometimes if I had like a running experiment going on, this would have been a really great tool for me to have had, because I could have set up a group for that experiment for each one of my students, and then they'd have a place that they can drop their data and they can discuss their findings, and it's all saved within the OPS system, and I can view it as the teacher. So it kind of gives them this like private area with home announcements, pages. Anytime somebody does something in the group, it's going to pop up in recent activity here. You know, so it's just a really powerful tool in giving them a private place in the course that they can work with just their group members. So I really like that. And then the other way that they can access groups, by the way, so I showed you that people tab. Students also have a groups button here on the side underneath courses. And if they click on it, they will see all their groups for every course that they're in. So if they want to access it, you know, they can find their group over here on the side. So it's kind of nice that they don't even have to really go into the course itself to get to their group page. So I really like this tool and what it can do. Again, it kind of creates like a mini Canvas course just for the students that are working in that group. So it's really nice. How do I actually create these, though, is probably what you're wondering. Fortunately, it's pretty simple. So the way that you would create a group, let me go back to my main course here. The way that you would create a group is by going to people, and then you'll notice that you have your group. I have one group list up here already, but if I look over here on the side, I have a group set button. And so to create groups, I can create a group set and then give it a name. So you don't just have to have one group set for a course. You can have many. I've had courses that I've done for professional development where there's been like 8 different group sets, you know, a group for each assignment or group project. So in this case, I'm going to do, this is the science fair. And then I can do allow self sign up, where my students can sign up for a group if they want, or I can just leave that blank and not allow them to sign up for it. If I don't want my students to sign up, I can come down here and then where it says group structure, I can actually decide how I want to split up my students. So it says split students by number of groups. So if I only want 6 groups, it'll only create 6 groups. It'll divide the students as evenly as it can, or I can pick split into number of students per group. So I'm going to click that. And then I can put in the number of students that I want to have in my course. So I'm going to do like, let's say there's 6. I would never do this in real life for a science fair, but for demonstration purposes. So let's say that there's going to be 6 students in each group. And then some of you have cross-listed your courses, which means that you have different sections of the same course in one Canvas course. Well, if you want to make sure that everybody in the group is in the same class, you can click this button here by requiring group members to be in the same section. So it will only group together students in my B1 class. It'll only group together students in my A2 class. You know, however I have my sections cross-listed. So I can select that option. And then there's a group leader button. The group leader is really only needed if you are going to have an assignment that the group needs to submit, because the group leader will be responsible for actually submitting that in Canvas. But you can click to have it automatically assign a group leader, or you can, you can have it be random or as the first person that joins, whichever you want to do it. I'm just going to do random. So then I'll hit save. So now it's dividing my students into these groups. And now I've got this group area. So it says science fair. And if I look along the side in the teacher view, I can see how many students are in each group, and I can see who it selected as the group leader. Now, let's say that you did this automatically and you didn't like how it set up some of the stuff. Fortunately, that's pretty easily changed. So what you can do is you can click this little arrow down to expand the groups. And you'll see the students that are assigned to each group, and there's a little person symbol for who the group leader is. And again, that person is just responsible for submitting a group assignment. They won't even know the difference if you're not using it for that purpose. But what I can do is I can click the 3 dots and I can set a different student as a leader. So if I did it randomly and I don't like some of it, I can change it. And then also you can shuffle students around by clicking and dragging. So just like with modules and pages, you can click and drag for groups. So I'm going to put Janelle up here, and I'm going to move Michelle down here. And so I can actually adjust my groups on the fly after I've created them. So if a group's not going well, there's some butting of heads and you want to just change them up, it's not too late once you've auto-created your groups. And that's pretty much it. So you can click on the 3 dots as well, and you can even delete a group. So you can get rid of groups if you want. If a student is added later, by the way, they'll end up over here on the side, and you just click and drag them to another group. So if you have groups set up that you're using all semester and you get a new student, don't worry about it. You can still add them to a group. So you'll just click over here and drag them over. But right now it says that there are no students in this main area, unassigned, it says. To see their home page, and again, I got here from people, and then the groups are listed at the top. I can click on these 3 dots, and I can do visit group homepage. So then that brings me to their homepage, and I can check, are they using the announcements? What pages do they have? Are there anything going on in the discussion board? Have they added files? I can check on what they're doing. And then up here at the top where it says select group, I can actually change the groups on the fly. So I can scroll through and check them out. So you have total access to all of these. It's really only the students that are split up. So that's what I really like about it. In the olden days, it was very hard. Olden days, as of a few years ago in Canvas, it was kind of hard as a teacher to check what they were doing in these private group spaces, but fortunately they fixed that. So now we have all of this. So you can go through and check it all out. Questions so far before I show you how to assign a discussion and an assignment to a group? Okay. So now I'm going to go back to my main class. And I always struggle figuring out how to do that here. You just got to kind of keep clicking at the top till you end up at your home page. But I'm back on my main class. And if I go to my modules, let's say I want to assign a discussion. So this one I already assigned. So if I click on this discussion board, I can see that each group has its own discussion board for this topic. So nothing's going to show up down here. If I want to see my students' replies, I have to click through here. And you can still use SpeedGrader, by the way, just the same as normal. So you don't have to keep manually clicking on those if you don't want to. But the way that you do that is if you hit Edit, as soon as you set a discussion as being graded, this little option down here pops up where it says this is a group discussion. If I don't want it to be a group discussion, I just leave that blank. But if I do want it to be a group discussion, so let's say I want this discussion board to be a discussion amongst just the members of a certain group instead of the whole class at once, I can click this button and then I can select my groups that I have created already in the course. So let's say this is going to go to my science fair group. And then the rest of the setup is the same. So I'll hit save. And if I wanted these students to see it, I would save and publish. And then for an assignment, it's very similar. So I go to an example assignment, hit edit. And then I got my option down here to make this a group. Wait, is this a discussion? That's supposed to be an assignment. I think I messed that up. Yep, I did. That's okay. We'll fix that real quick. We'll do example assignment 2. No. Okay. So I got a regular assignment. I click on this. I hit edit. After I put in my instructions and set points and all that stuff, I can set my submission, and I can click to make this a group assignment. So if I click on a group assignment, I'm given a couple options. Number one, just like the discussion, I am able to select my pre-made groups. I can also, if I want to, click new group category and make new groups right here from the assignment, which is kind of cool. In this case, I'm just going to do science fair. And then I get an option right here that says assign grades to each student individually. It kind of works as described. So if you click this, each student is going to be responsible for still submitting their own assignment, and then you're going to grade it individually just like you would with any normal assignment. If you don't click this, it's going to be assigned as a grade or as a group assignment grade. So if 5 students submit the same assignment, they're all going to get the same grade. And this is where that group leader thing comes into play, because the group leader will be the member of the group that's responsible for submitting the final product. So if they're all working on, say, a PowerPoint, and you want to grade them on that, by leaving that blank, the group leader will be responsible for submitting the PowerPoint once the PowerPoint is done by everyone in the group. And then when you grade it, it's going to automatically assign that grade to all the students that were in that group. So if you grade that way, that's useful to you. If you don't, and you just want to assign individual grades anyway, you can select this option. So that's how you can do that. And then again, SpeedGrader works exactly the same. You click on SpeedGrader, it shows you the students, and so on and so forth. But it marks it off once you've graded the one that counts for everyone in the group. So that's groups. That's how you can set up groups, and that's how you can utilize them. Any questions before I cover my last item for today? Okay, last thing that I wanted to show you is peer reviews. So this is another way that you can engage students in your content by having them do a peer review over each other's assignments. So if I click edit on an assignment, what a peer review is basically it assigns grading to a student to review the work of somebody else. So if I come down here underneath where it says the group assignment option, there's a peer review button. So I can click on require peer reviews. And I get a few options. So number one is I can manually assign peer reviews. So if I want so-and-so to check out so-and-so's assignment once they submit it, I can keep that option. Or if I just want it to happen automatically, I can select that option as well. And then I can assign a certain number of reviews per user. So I'm going to say each person in this course has to do 1 review. And then it says assign the reviews. So you can either leave this blank and it'll be the due date for the full assignment, or you can set a different date. So let's say my assignment's due the 15th. I want students to get access to peer review them on the 16th. So I can select the 16th then to give a date that those launch. Otherwise, it's just going to be the due date. Allow intra-group peer reviews. I can't remember what that is. I'll have to play around with that. And then the other big thing people always ask me about is, can I have this be anonymous? And the answer is yes. So peer reviews appear anonymously. If I click this option, the student doing the peer review will not know who they're doing the peer review on, and the student who gets the feedback back is not going to see who gave them feedback. So it is anonymous, but you can see it. So peer reviews appear anonymously. Now, the way this will work then, if I have it set up just like this, is once a student submits their assignment, sorry, once a student submits their assignment, it's going to automatically assign another student to do a review. Apologize about my voice. Finally gave out. Then at the top, there's a peer review button. You can click here and you can see who's been assigned to what. And you can actually manually assign things as well. And what the student will see is they'll see that they have a peer review to do. They'll click on it, and then they'll get the same SpeedGrader view that you would normally get. So they'll have SpeedGrader. They'll be able to provide feedback on the assignment, and then once they submit it, the student who had their thing peer reviewed is going to be able to check out the feedback. And then, so that's a really useful tool, and it can be totally anonymous. So I know I went through that kind of fast, but I will have an additional resource available about specifically peer reviews underneath this recording. So I'm going to stop sharing and see, are there final questions before I let you go for today? Okay, so with that, thank you for attending the last session. Like I said, I'll have an additional resource on peer reviews that I'll be posting underneath this recording. So hopefully this was helpful. And again, I'm Tyler Shaban. I'm the technology trainer. Please feel free to email me if you have any additional questions. So I'm going to end this recording now.